Hey, what's up? This is Paul Carrero again, and we're gonna be talking about chess emotions. And now, this is a thing which is so difficult sometimes to answer. Like what's an emotion? What do emotions have to do with chess? And we have to face it. Sometimes you feel that your heart rate goes up. You go like, oh my god, you're angry. You have certain fear. You feel like, oh my god, this is so cool. Whatever. And we're gonna start by talking about emotions today with a question, which is what's an emotion? And you can ask a chess player what's the mass of a star, what's the orbit of, who knows, some sort of weird cosmic thing. You can ask a chess player about history. You can ask him about mathematics. The guy's like a genius in logic. But when you ask him about emotions, okay, then he becomes a little bit hesitant. And as a psychologist, student, I can tell you that there are many, many ways in which you can look at emotions and in which you can describe emotions and theorize about emotions. You can say everything from emotions being social constructions. You can say that emotions are responses to certain perceptions. You can say that, whatever. You can say a lot of things about emotions. But for the sake of this theory that I'm going to explain to you, in my take on emotions, we're going to define emotions as biochemical algorithms. And we're going to start today by talking a little bit about what are algorithms. An algorithm is basically a series of steps to solve a problem. That's kind of what an algorithm is. You can make it more complex than that, but let's just keep it as simple as we can, right? So here's the thing. Let's start by this weird example for you to comprehend a little bit of what do I mean by emotions being biochemical algorithms. Let's imagine that there is a monkey, right? Some sort of monkey, whatever, a monkey. And he notices that on top of a tree, there are some bananas. And he goes like, oh my god, there are bananas. But next to the tree, there is a tiger. Or there is some sort of dangerous animal. Whether a wolf, a tiger, whatever you want to put right there, a dog, who knows. There is some sort of animal, right? You are the monkey. And if you are the monkey, what are the things that you have to consider in order for you to determine if you can jump to try to get the bananas, like run to the place and jump on the tree and then try to, climb the tree and whatever to try to get the bananas? Well, you might argue that some things that you have to consider are what's the distance between you and the tree? What's the distance between you and the tiger? What's the distance between the tiger and the tree? What's the velocity with which you can run towards the tree? What's the velocity or the speed with which the animal which is right there can chase you? How long would it take for you to get to the tree? How long would it take for this guy to get to the tree? Can I jump higher than he can jump? All of these weird things, right? Also the state of the animal. Is this animal sleeping, right? Like, is this tiger sleeping? Does he look like he has a lot of energy, right? And he could chase me. Does he look tired? Also, how high are the bananas? Are as many bananas as energy as I'm gonna spend? Is it actually worthy for me to get the bananas on top of the tree? Notice how many little things, and there could be even more than that, but notice how many little things you have to consider and to calculate pretty well if you don't want to die by catching the bananas on top of a tree, right? So here's the thing, what do your average monkey do? Evidently your average monkey sits down there with a notebook and he starts to make logical analysis about the correct and precise moment in which he is gonna run towards the tree, jump on top of it, and try to get the bananas, right? No, that's not how it works. At some point, he feels something inside him, right? He feels this energy inside him. He goes like, okay, this is the moment to run. And then he runs and he goes for the tree. Or he feels that it's not gonna work. He feels kind of sad about it. He goes like, oh fuck, those were like really cool bananas right there. But I'm not gonna be able to get them because the tiger's gonna eat me. He goes like, wait, he doesn't go for the bananas. But notice something interesting right there. The emotion is just a way to unconsciously calculate all of these little factors and determine the courses of action of this monkey. When the monkey feels anger and he goes like, oh yeah, and he jumps on top of the tree, you might argue in a weird way. Also, there are many theories, you know, this is really cool, but you might argue that it is because it feels the result of the end calculations which are going unconsciously on his mind, and he decides to take an action. And that's really cool, you know, the monkey might get the bananas, it might not get the bananas, whatever, but here's the point. The emotion itself is an algorithm, is a way to solve the problem, and is basically allowing you to trigger the response, which is going to allow you to act at some given point, you know? So that's something really important for us to recognize right there. Now, let's talk a little bit about some weird things. Let's talk a little bit about psychoanalysis. Whenever I talk about psychoanalysis, I don't really trust psychoanalysis a lot, but I think it's like a really good way to explain stuff sometimes and to be able to convey ideas. You know, so psychoanalysis is kind of dubious. It's one of those realms of psychology which I doubt and which doesn't quite convince me. But for the sake of this thing here, for the sake of understanding the ideas that I want to explain to you, let's go through a little bit of it, right? One of the pillars of psychoanalysis is the idea of the id, the ego, and the superego, right? The id being your instincts, your impulses, you know, like that energy that you feel inside you that asks you to fulfill your desires and stuff. You have the superego, which is like the morality, like the consciousness of yourself, like this moral entity which is telling you this is the right way to go about it, this is the correct thing, this is what you should do. And you have the ego, which is kind of like the convergence of this dichotomy between the id and the superego, which is basically what you are at the end of the day. It's this sort of end result of the fight between the id and the superego. But now here's the thing, you know, in psychoanalysis, sometimes when it comes to understanding the ways in which babies act, or the ways in which children act, some people would say that childs are basically pure id. They are all impulses. They don't have like this self-control. They don't have like this understanding of what's going on there, and they would just cry for something and just run around and spend like a lot of energy and stuff and whatever, you know. It's like a lot of impulses in a kid because he hasn't learned how to control his emotions. He hasn't developed a superego, if you will, right? So here's the thing: if you see a baby and he has a needle, you go like, oh my god, don't take the needle because it's really dangerous. He might eat the needle, and then that could be like really bad. So even though the kid wants to get the needle, you do not allow the kid to get the needle because he hasn't developed a correct way to evaluate the world in front of him, to determine that the needle can be dangerous, and to say, oh no, I cannot take this needle inside my mouth because it's dangerous, right? The kid would do that. And if you see a kid with a needle, then you go like, no, and you immediately take it away from him or from her. So that's something important for us to recognize there. Notice how, for the kid to be able to recognize the needle as a threat, or to be able to recognize the needle for what it is, he would spend some time developing his mental process so that eventually he's able to comprehend what's going on. Here's the thing, same thing happens in chess. When you're exposed to new ideas, when you're exposed to new elements, you're kind of like a baby with a needle. You don't know what you're doing. You're kind of just doing whatever it comes to you. You know, you're like, oh yeah, whatever, the needle. But here's the thing, you need to polish your instincts. You need to polish the ways in which you look at the world, so that eventually your emotions are calibrated enough as for them to give you the answer to certain really dangerous scenario. For example, trying to catch bananas and stuff, you know? You might be thinking, okay, but Paul, I don't want to catch bananas. Yeah, but there might be some other elements which could be dangerous in the world. Like, for example, you're driving your car, and then suddenly you feel that you need to brake, you know? Like, oh, I need to brake because otherwise I'm going to crash. And you feel it. You don't think about it consciously, right? So the same thing happens here. When you become a chess player, when you're starting to learn some chess, your emotions are pure nonsense. Can you see that? Your emotions are not all of these weird mechanisms telling you, oh my god, do this or that. I mean, to some extent they are, but they're not polished, you know? They are not so precise. And you cannot trust your emotions when you're starting to play chess, because your emotions make mostly no sense at all. So you need to go and think rationally about the things that you are doing. But what happens when you become really good at it? Actually, you can start to trust your emotions. At this point, I might feel that a move is good, and I might be able to play it. you know. But what has to happen for me to be able to reach this point? I have to calibrate for a lot of time so that eventually my feeling makes sense. Don't get me wrong here. You don't need to be Kasparov to trust your feeling. Sometimes you are gonna get it right, and that's gonna feel good. You're gonna be conditioned, if you will, as you could put it in terms of behaviorism and Skinner or Pavlov, or all of these weird things, right? So eventually you're gonna get conditioned. When you commit a mistake, you're gonna feel bad, right? You're gonna be like, oh no, this is not gonna work pretty well. And when you are like playing proper chess, you're gonna feel good, and you're gonna say, oh, this kind of work, and then eventually you're gonna develop a feeling for it. But here's the thing: you cannot trust your feelings at the beginning, and even when you start to develop a decent sense of what's going on, you know, in terms of your emotions and the things that you're feeling, notice how your emotions are being calculations which are unconscious in your brain, and therefore you're calculating things which are happening in the position without even looking at them so deeply, you know, without even having to use your mental resources right there so much, you know. But here's the thing, again, quite fundamental, emotions can be tricky. So ideally, your games in chess are gonna become not only about your rationality, but also a little bit about your feelings and their conflict. And you're gonna have like the it, which is gonna be your impulses in the game, and you're also gonna have your super ego, which is gonna be like the morality, like the rationality behind it. And eventually, out of all of those things, the ego is gonna appear, and you're gonna be able to play your games, and you're gonna be able to calibrate that. But again, you're gonna require some time. So don't follow the whole idea of follow your feelings, trust your heart, that you can get out of movies for teenagers and stuff blindly, because chess is not so easy. Chess can be kind of complicated, you know. But again, eventually your emotions are gonna have like a gigantic role in your game, and are gonna be calibrated, and you're gonna be able to use them.